Hello everyone, Cindy Soundman here, and welcome to another exciting edition of Look at the Schedule. Now, the past couple of shows that we did, they were all cable game show blogs from the Family Channel or USA. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. A network game show blog. Specifically, from the mid-80s heyday of must-see TV, NBC. And the timeline we're going to talk about, July 1987. New shows had just come onto the schedule. We had some shows changing stuff up, some shows at the peak of their popularity. So why not take a look at the schedule and see how it fares up to today? And all we gotta do is just ask that Denver sage himself, Woody Page, to do something. Woody, what should we do?
Him for that.
You gotta look at the schedule, Pasky.
And another thing I want to bring up, that even though this is the network schedule, whenever you grew up in 1987, it might have been a bit different because, for example, we have Super Password on at 12 o'clock, and I know a lot of stations didn't really carry Super Password at 12 o'clock, instead opting for their local news. And I know for a fact that a couple of NBC shows wound up on Q13 Fox in my area. For example, Card Sharks, which was on CBS, with Bob Eubanks, wound up on Q13 Fox. It's the same idea, but with NBC shows it's a bit different. So, with that being out of the way, let's dive headfirst into the fun and games of NBC. We start the schedule off at 10 a.m. with Sale of the Century. Sale of the Century took over this time slot from reruns of Family Ties. As for Sale of the Century itself, it was still going strong, kind of like the economy at that point. What also was going on was a weird new time for sales. Recently, they introduced instant cash to the mix, almost making the Runaways seem even more like Runaways. Giving up your lead for a 1 in 3 shot at a few thousand isn't worth the risk if you have either a massive lead or you're near the end of your run. Aside from that show, the show was still humming like usual. Jim was his hard-working self, doing this in definition in Canada while having great rapport with the contestants in Summer Bartholomew. What I also find interesting is that NBC had their quiz shows at the start of the day, while most would have a lighter game to start the day and then work up to the hard stuff. But with a show that had a big reputation to keep up, it was still doing the business. Well, nothing more needs to be said about Sale of the Century. I love the Sale of the Century from this time period, especially with the winner's board, instant cash, add a lot more money into the game, and I kind of enjoyed it. Now, what was replacing Sale of the Century at 10:30, you ask? Well, here comes a new challenger. Taking over the 10:30 a.m. slot from Sale of the Century is the revival of Blockbusters with Bill Raftery. Now, I personally love Blockbusters with Bill Cullen. It's one of my favorites from the early 80s. Blockbusters with Bill Raftery as host? Not so much. To me, the show was a bit of a departure from the original with a 1 versus 1 format, with the advantage flipping in Game 2 and disappearing in Round 3. The game itself was still the same, but losing the family pair took out a hook and a lot of charm to the original. Bill Raftery himself was good too, but having to fill Bill Cullen's shoes was a Herculean task that not many could make work. But those things aside, it was still a very fun and enjoyable quizzer and paired well with Sale. Also, Blockbusters showed off how much the technology in game shows was coming along. The computerized board itself was fantastic, and also the big hexagonal light board that housed the monitor was a sight as well. It looked to be destined for good things from its debut. And I still enjoyed Blockbusters with Bill Raftery for what it was. Even though they did change the look and made it a 1 versus 1 format, they didn't change the gameplay at all, and I find that refreshing in a revival, especially with the revivals that we had in the past 20 years. At 11 a.m., it's Wheel of Fortune. If you remember the top 5 interesting facts about Wheel video that we did about a week or so ago, you'll know the show was almost canceled in 1980 twice. That's right, 1980 twice. But thankfully it didn't get canceled, and with a syndicated run doing gangbusters, being the #1 show in syndication, the sky was the limit for Wheel of Fortune. This is also a case of being the longest stalwart on the schedule. Shows had come and gone at that point, but Wheel was still spinning in daytime since 1975. What also helped the show was it being the #1 syndicated game show, and that effect trickled down to the daytime version. For a lot of people trying out for the show, maybe it was a great thing to have 2 versions airing concurrently. The partnership between Pat and Van was getting stronger and stronger with every day, and so was everything else with the show. With it being a ratings winner, especially opposite Price is Right, there was no signs of stopping it. You know what I find interesting about Wheel of Fortune being in the 11 o'clock time slot? The show at the 11:30 time slot was a bridge from the current version to the classic version. At 11:30, it's Scrabble with Chuck Woolery. The times, they are changing indeed from going from 1986 to 1987, and Scrabble did that by, well, overhauling the entire format. During this time period, they just wrapped up the $100,000 All-American tournament and decided that the best way to go ahead was to copy that format and make it a self-contained show, much like the tournament. Instead of having the winner move on to Friday, they played the all-new bonus sprint, which was 2 words to solve in under 10 seconds. If the contestant does it, they win the jackpot, which started at $5,000 and grew by $1,000 each day it wasn't won. This is the format that I grew up with, and honestly prefer it to the staggering format. I like faster-paced games, and the straddling format kind of dragged on for me when I watched it first. The format change didn't harm the show at all in the slightest, and it continued to be a great pairing with Wheel at this time slot. It also provided me a good counterbalance against the juggernaut that was The Price is Right as well. And balance works for the schedule. As you see, at the 10 o'clock hour you have the quiz shows, and at 11 o'clock hour you have word games. So how do you follow up the word games at 11 o'clock? With the granddaddiest word game of them all. And at 12 o'clock it is Super Password with Bert Convy. Now, the noon time slot was always considered deaf to many viewers, but Bert Convy and Super Password loved the slot so much that they moved there when they debuted, and they didn't leave until 1989. At this point in time, Super Password was just chugging along as usual, not doing much of anything different from when the show debuted. I find it quite interesting where shows like Sail, Blockbusters, and Scrabble are changing up formats. Bert Convy was there at noon playing the same game as usual and drawing a pretty decent crowd from a time slot that was pretty much penciled in for local newscasts. There honestly isn't much that needs to be said about Super Password other than it was still a good show that didn't need to change to keep the viewers hooked. There are plenty of reasons to watch. Big money, the ability or lack thereof from the celebs and contestants, and see if Bert Convy will blow yet another puzzle or not. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's Super Password's motto. So what wraps up the block at 12:30? Wrapping up the block is Wordplay with Tom Kennedy at 12:30. So I get the combination between Super Password and Wordplay is fun with celebs. Well, I can understand that, and it was still a pretty good show. Wordplay had just debuted a week prior, and compared to the fast-paced games that precede it, sometimes it's nice to have a slow game that focused more on laughs than anything else. This is also ably hosted by Tom Kennedy, which is nice. The game is a lot like Liar's Club, but with dictionary words that nobody's ever heard of, and trying to make that funny is a task. Sometimes it's hit or miss, but it's enjoyable no matter what. What I also enjoyed was Double Definitions at the end, which took a somewhat easy bonus game in Gold Run for Blockbusters and made it a bit harder and more exciting. And that's essentially the game. It's a simple but fun game that fit well with what was going on with the schedule. And there you have it. That is the entire NBC game show block from January 1987. I honestly love this schedule. All 6 shows were good, and it had the perfect balance between different styles of games, and it's just something you could go back at and enjoy. Now, how long did this last? Well, it only lasted 4 months, and the reason why is Blockbusters was canceled to make way for Classic Concentration. Now, there is a debate whether Blockbusters was a filler show, just so they would have something on the air until Classic Concentration was ready. But I respond to that with this. Why go through all the trouble of building a set, having the host and everything, when you have endless sitcom reruns that you could have? You had Family Ties on for a while, and that was still doing decently. But why change that up just to have a show that's only going to be on for 4 months to debut another show, which ironically went on for 4.5 years? Anyway, it's just some food for thought. But once again, schedule's great. I loved it. And we don't know what we're going to do next, so enjoy the mystery. Follow us on Discord and Twitter and Facebook. Or, if you want an answer, become a Patreon backer at patreon.com/GameShowGumbo, and you'll be in the know for future look at the schedule and other future videos. That's going to do it for me. I'm Cindy Settlement, and until next time, bye-bye!